Welcome to our Haunted Hidden Histories of San Jose, Japantown show. It's All Hallows Eve here on Jackson Street, and I'm Kurt Fukuda, one of the Hidden Histories team members. And I will be your host for the next 30 minutes or so on this Haunted Hidden Histories of San Jose, Japantown. The rest of our team and advisors are here in the room, and you can see them as they join me. And we will be sharing some spooky stories to get you into the Halloween mood tonight. Now, parents, for the younger members of our audience, go to our website, which is Hidden Histories Jtown.org. That's Hidden Histories Jtown. That's all one word, .org. That's our website. Click the link for the Haunted Hidden Histories webpage. You will see downloadable coloring pages that illustrate some of the stories we'll be sharing with you tonight. And there's also a craft project. Now, there's also a link for you to share a spooky J-Town story. And please go ahead and share, because our staff will be monitoring the chat and I will be reading submissions at the end of the program. Now, to start off the show, I will tell you the story of the strange suicide on Jackson Street. Did you know there was a strange suicide back in the old days of San Jose, Japantown? It happened above the Kirakute Chinese restaurant located on Jackson Street. Now, the Kirakute was in the building that's now occupied by Hukila. For old timers of San Jose, Japantown, Kirakute, alongside of Kenying Lo and Wings, was one of the most popular Chinese restaurants in Japantown. And its heyday was from the 1920s until the late 1940s. And there was a boarding house on the second floor above the restaurant. Now, you might say, now, wait a minute. There aren't any rooms above the Hukila. How could there have been a boarding house above the Kirakute? Well, the building was constructed in the early 1910s, and it was originally a two-story wooden building. The restaurant was on the bottom floor, and a boarding house was on the top floor. Now, you have to picture, on Jackson Street, most of the buildings were wood. They were very box-like and often two stories. Well, a fire broke out in around 1947, 1948, which destroyed much of the Kirakute building. The city of San Jose wanted the building completely rebuilt. And the Fujino family, who owned the building at the time, were able to talk the city into letting them renovate the surviving structure. The city agreed, but only if the renovated building was one story and not two. So that's why when you go to the Hukilao, it's a one-story building. But let's get back to the strange suicide story. As many of you know, late 1929 brought about a catastrophe to our country. It was the Wall Street crash, which brought about the Great Depression. The US economy collapsed, leaving most people destitute and unemployed. San Jose, Japantown, which was then known as San Jose, Chinatown, was not immune to the disaster. Everybody in Chinatown was desperate and destitute. One neighborhood resident, Henry Tanaka, lived in the boarding house above Kirakute. He became extremely depressed over his unemployment and poverty. Then, on December 4th, 1929, Tanaka took his life. But he didn't hang himself. He didn't drink poison. He didn't shoot himself. No. Tanaka performed the ritual of seppuku, also known as harakiri, to end his life. Now, for those who don't know, seppuku is suicide by disembowelment. You take your knife and you cut open your stomach. It was a practice originally done by the samurai in order to restore their honor back in the old days. Well, this horrifying suicide left an indelible memory in almost every person who lived in Japantown at that time. The great historian, Dr. Tokyo Ishikawa, whenever he would talk about the Kirakute building, he would always mention Tanaka Seppuku. Next door to the Kirakute, there was another two-story wooden building. It was also a boarding house called the Kyushu-ya. Tatsue Sueshi, whose parents ran the Kyushu-ya, told me that her and her sister were always scared whenever they had to go upstairs to their room in the Kyushu-ya. Why? Because the Kyushu-ya had a window that looked right out to the room where Tanaka killed himself. Suyeshi told me that she and her sister would run up the stairs as fast as they could. Now, did Tanaka's ghost haunt the Kirakute building? Well, the Sueshi girls weren't going to look out the window to find out. That's for sure. And that's our first spooky story. Now we have a treat. Brenda Wong Aoki is going to tell a story next. Brenda Wong Aoki is a playwright. She's an artistic director, and she is America's first nationally recognized Asian Pacific storyteller. She creates works for the theater, for symphonies, contemporary dance, world music, taiko, jazz, live performance, film, and museum installations. Now, Brenda is a descendant of Japanese, Chinese, Spanish, and Scottish ancestries. Her work speaks to the essential hybridity of the American culture. It really does. Now, when the Hidden Histories co-director, Tom Izu, invited Brenda to participate in today's program, Brenda said the following about Japantown. She said, "I have wonderful life moments from San Jose J-Town going back since the early 1970s, but my ghost stories of San Jose are probably just all the memories I have of going there for obon year after year and dancing with the ancestors." Now here is Brenda Wong Aoki telling the story of the Twilight Crane.
Kato was a kind-hearted peasant who lived high up in the pines in a mountain village far from the capital city. One cold, icy day, Kato was walking through the forest when he heard fluttering in the snow. It was a crane. Its pure white wing had been pierced by an arrow. Kato's big, coarse hands gently pulled out the arrow. This is gonna hurt. Wiped away the blood and set the bird free. Come on, you can do it. Come on, there you go. Time passed. Then late one night, there was a knock on the door of his lonely hut. There, in tattered clothes and no shoes, stood a woman. "I have come to be your wife." "Who? Why, me?" "You speak the language of the heart." Kato saw that she was shivering. He brought her inside the hut and saw that she was beautiful. And so this woman, who called herself Tsu, became his wife. And Kato was happier than he had ever dreamed possible. But as we know, 2 mouths are harder to feed than one. One night as they sat by the fire, Kato said, "Tsu, Your rice bowl is empty. Here, why don't you have some of my rice? Oh no, I'm not hungry. I'm fasting. Oh, well, I can fast too. And they sat by the fire till the last embers had died, staring at the few remaining kernels of rice in Karo's bowl. The next morning, Karo woke up, found that his good wife had set up a weaving loom in the back room of the hut. The other women in the village weave cloth to sell at the market. I too can weave, but Karo, you must promise never to look in while I'm weaving. For 3 days and 3 nights she wove. Ooh. Finally she emerged, pale and thin, with a bolt of cloth. It was soft as a cloud, white as the snow. Karo took it to the market and brought back many gold coins. Look at here. But the winter stretched on, and on, and on. Until one day Sue and Karo found themselves sitting by the fire staring at empty rice bowls. You know, we can't fast all winter. We'll starve to death. We gotta eat some, Sue. Could you weave one more time, please? This is the last time I weave. The last. And remember, you must promise never to look in while I'm weaving. For 4 days and 4 nights she wove. Ooh. Finally she emerged, even paler and thinner than before, with a bolt of cloth that seemed to shimmer with a light all its own. Karo took it to the market and brought back 3 times as many gold coins. Look at this. Well, the next day, a traveling merchant stopped by their little hut. I am told you are the one that weaves that fabulous cloth. Tell me, what kind of thread do you use? Did you know that if you took it to the capital, you could make 10 times? No, make that 100 times as much money. Why, for a mere 75% commission, I could. I see his lips move, but I don't understand his words. Karo, make that man go away. I don't like him. Karo led the man away. An hour later, Karo returned. Sue, did you know that if you'd weave just one more time, we'd have hundreds of gold coins? Karo, I can't weave again. But we'd be rich! I don't want to be rich. I'm happy the way we are. How can you be happy in this miserable hut? Just look at you, rags! With the money you could buy new clothes, hair ornaments, makeup, so you could be beautiful. What's wrong with the way I am? Nothing, but this is a window of opportunity. Ours is a rare and precious commodity. Well, the elite clientele exists only in the capital. Even with a 75% commission, with our merchant help, our profits will skyrocket. Karo, stop it! Stop it! Stop it! All right. For 4 days and 4 nights she wove. Zoo-ka! Karo listened, overcome with greed. Come on, Sue! Hurry up, Sue! Come on! Zoo-ka! On the 5th day, Zoo-ka! Why'd you stop weaving? Hey, Sue! Why'd you stop weaving in there? Come on! Karo forgot his promise and opened the door. Inside the room was a pure white crane, smeared with blood, for with its beak it had plucked out its own feathers and placed them in the loom. I was wounded, remember? And you saved me. But now your dear heart has been captured by the world of men. So I return to the sky. Cuddle looked down in the snow and saw a stream of silken fabric. It was white, glowing as the stars at night, through which was woven a single thread of crimson.
Our next story, thank you, Brenda Wong-Aoki. Our next story is going to be told by Robert Ragsack, and it brings us back to San Jose, Japantown on 5th Street.
Good evening. Have you ever seen something that wasn't really there? All of us must have. I have through my life. I've heard things in a dark room, a bedroom, and I couldn't figure out what that was, but it was very clear. And a face. I even saw a face that came right out of my bedroom. And now I have a story for you from my sister. This occurred at 639 North 5th Street, right across the street from the Buddhist temple. She was about 3 or 4 years old. And according to what my dad told us, she started to talk really weird and talk to somebody, somewhere. But she was talking very clearly. My dad rushed into the house, into the bedroom, and asked her, "What's going on? Who you were talking to?" And she says, "Uncle." She pointed right to the door, and there was no one there. Now that is pretty scary enough, but in my older years, I've seen a couple just by myself. And that really has scared me. And I think I'm getting scared right now. The next event occurred just down the street. Everybody knows where Happy House is on Taylor and 5th. There's a parking lot there. Used to be a house, 683. So my sister now is about 8 or 9 years old, my sister Helen. We were all crammed together, us kids, in the front bedroom. And late at night, she started to scream and started to yell. I jumped out of bed and I was wondering what was going on. I thought she was just playing. Now in rushes my mom and dad, and I could see on their faces, they are scared. Now when I saw their faces, I was really scared. And I almost started to cry. But then my parents left the room. And I thought they abandoned us. And they came back, and then with raw rice, they threw rice into the ceiling. Now, what was that about? Well, my dad told me later that it is a Filipino suspicion that you throw something that's meaningful. Well, what's more meaningful to a Filipino than rice? That coincidence stories are so clear to me that I experience it is almost as if it happened tonight. And thank you for paying attention.
Whoa.
Thank you, Robert, for sharing those spooky stories. So think about it the next time you are in the Happy House parking lot. That there might be spirits. Better bring a handful of rice with yourself. And now we are going to pause for a short commercial break.
Good evening. Kurt, is this me where I talk about the Hidden Histories Project?
It is you, Tony.
Okay. All right. All right. Good evening, everybody. What is the Hidden Histories of San Jose Japantown project that inspired tonight's Haunted Hidden Histories. What exactly are we haunting about? Hidden Histories is an experimental art project funded by an immersive technology and the arts grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation. It is sponsored by JAMS with support from the California History Center at De Anza College. The project continues its work begun at the beginning of this year in exploring the overlapping histories of the Chinese, Japanese, and Filipino American communities that have shared the San Jose, Japantown area. Our project will create 9 special art installations that you will be able to see in our Japantown neighborhood using augmented reality technology, and it'll be on your phone and accessible that way as well. It'll bring the stories of these communities to life in a very, very stunning way, very artistic way. Augmented reality, or AR, is a mobile app technology that overlays computer-generated information, sound, images, and text on the camera view of your smartphone on the real world around you. It's going to be amazing. You're going to be able to see it on your phone, and you're going to see all these beautiful images and very artistic images. So really excited about that. And it's going to bring so much life, so much more life to Japantown. Our project has now reached an important milestone. We have selected the 9 community artists who will begin work on the augmented reality art pieces. Please learn about our artists' ideas and their plans for their work by visiting our website. They're going to be putting in the chat, so you can see all the artists who were selected and some of their plans for it. So please check that out. And let me introduce our artists here tonight. I don't know if there's some of them here, but if they are, amazing. Okay. Also, stay tuned through a series of interviews and stories we'll feature throughout the weeks to come. You will see the variety in style and content of the artist's proposed pieces and the fascinating mixture of personal and historical stories they plan to bring to life using AR art. When you hear about the artist's unique backgrounds and feel their enthusiasm and energy expressed through their own words, it is sure to spark your own feelings and imagination. It will give you a glimpse in your mind's eye of what is possible using augmented reality technology and art to bring into the real world. The hidden yet real life stories of the Chinese, Japanese, and Filipinos' lived experiences that have shaped the development of the well-loved community we all share. Please follow the news on our website, YouTube, Facebook, and other social media outlets. We hope you will want to support our efforts to continue this work as we uncovered more and more little-known, moving, and unique stories about San Jose, Japantown. So now, back to some serious spookiness. From the haunted, hidden histories of San Jose, Japan.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you very much. We heard a story from the Japanese community and one from the Filipino community. Now we will hear about the Chinese community from the wonderful historian Connie Young Yu. She will talk about the Dajui celebration.
Hello, everyone. Everything that I'm talking about Daju, comes from my father, John C. Young, who was born in Heinleinville, Chinatown in 1912. And his father, Mr. Young, Young Sung Guang, was one of the people that was burned out of the Market Street Chinatown. And he was a teenager then. He had a second chance in San Jose because of John Heinlein, and he was able to grow up, finish his work there and become a merchant and raise a family. And so one of the most wonderful festivals that was celebrated in Heinleinville was called Daju. And it's a festival that was celebrated every year around the summer in the 15th day of the 7th month in the lunar calendar. It was the Feast of the Hungry Ghosts. And these ghosts are unhappy spirits who no longer have descendants to care for them. So they wander in search of food, and they are not appeased. And if they are not appeased, they will cause malicious mischief. This holiday was trick or treating for hungry ghosts. children and their parents would set out food for these wandering spirits. And it'd be fruits like cherries and peaches, and they'd have pork buns and rice cakes, and they'd put it on a wonderful platter in front of their doors. And at night, these spirits would come through and have their feast. And if they were satisfied with the offerings, they would do no tricks. This Feast of the Hungry Ghosts originated in China centuries ago and celebrated in the southern villages where the Chinatown people came from. And the festivities, especially in Heinleinville, would last 4 days and 3 nights. And people, particularly workers from all over the valley, would gather here for this grand celebration that they all felt that they had to do, and they felt they had a role. And if they all participated well and appeased the hungry ghosts, they would have a wonderful, peaceful rest of the year. So in Heinleinville, San Jose, it was the most elaborate Chinese festival. It was bigger than the Lunar New Year. So there are great preparations for the arrival of hordes of hungry ghosts. Every household, and that meant a store, because every family lived in a store. Chinatown was the center for the Chinese communities throughout the valley. I'd say the work camps, people would come in for the celebration. A Chinatown meant a real community that was an extended community for the whole region. And this festival was so famous that people would come from all over Chinatowns, as far as Stockton and Sacramento, because it was so special. So the great preparations took place. My grandfather, he would hand dip large red candles and painted them with mythical creatures like dragons, and incense and candles were burned all night in front of every door. The temple was the center of the town, and the festival commenced there. And there would be 6-foot-high paper effigies of guardian gods on each side of the door. And there were strings of firecrackers lit to scare away the evil spirits. Smoke in the air, and there would be this misty atmosphere. So, were the children scared? After all, these ghosts were coming to their neighborhood, and there were evil spirits swirling around to cause interference. The children wore their Chinese warm jackets, and everyone, especially babies, wore colorful, marvelous hats to protect them from evildoers. Because what evil spirit would dare to challenge this? Look at that one. Woo! Woo! Or this. Woohoo!
So cute.
Yes, and then the eyes were very important. Okay, so this would be like a little lion. Okay, look at that one. And then, of course, people think of these as tiger hats because the tiger hats were very traditional. They looked like this. Little kid would be wearing this. And this was no ordinary tiger hat that this kid wore for Daju. This was a double tiger. So he's extra fierce.
Oh,
He had felt very, 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 very protected. And another child would be wearing a very regal one. It's pretty scary. It's pretty scary, you know, but it had a symbol, imperial symbol on it, and a knot showing that he was from a high-ranking civil official. So this little boy was completely safe. So, and then this is a hat, and I wanted to show you this hat. They're like a little emperor's hat, and you could hear that the little bells were. And this actually was worn by somebody in the early days during the Qing Dynasty, 1895. So you see this photograph? This
Wow.
a picture of the first
Wow.
generation of Hainan children. You see, they're all wearing hats, and their Qing Dynasty outfits. This is 1895.
Oh, hold it a little higher, a little bit higher.
Oh, there,
Yeah, there you go.
yeah.
Pull it back. Pull it
Yeah.
back.
Wow.
Okay, there. All right. And so you see that he was very, very confident. You see, he's so confident. And so here he'd be marching in the procession behind his parents. And here's another, especially, look at that one, you know. This is a wind flap to protect him. You know, and there's a butterfly on the back. So you could see that they were very, the children felt that this was a very exciting festival. It was, of course, it was scary, it was eerie, and they kind of enjoyed that part because everybody was participating and they had a role. And my father said that he was one of the altar boys. He was 8 years old, and he and his friend Art Ing would be standing beside the priests, because there were 3 Taoist priests that came from San Francisco to preside in the ceremonies. And they joined, they would in the temple, and the head priest would be chanting the names of all of those who donated to the festival, and it would take hours. And my dad and his friend, they would be assisting, and afterwards they knew that they would get red envelopes by the elders for helping out. And they saw that the head priest was very impressive. He was tall and he wore the longest robes, and he hypnotized a rooster who sat on the end of a sword and sat still for the whole ceremony, all the chanting.
Wow.
And the children whispering, and they were saying, he is a spirit. There's his head, but the rest of his body is a spirit. He is one of the friendly ghosts. And so Art Ing, he had a little ruler, and he stood behind the priest, and he lifted up the robe. He lifted up higher and higher, and he goes, trousers. So they realized, okay, he was a human being, but there were still ghosts. We wanted to believe in all of this. So this was the beginning, and they had the opening procession where the children wearing their hats would be in the procession behind the priest, and all of the parents would join in, and the merchants would take out the gods that were in their houses, that the god, carry him, and then there'd be Guangun, a very favorite god, a very just god, who every store had a god Guangun. They would be carrying them, marching from the temple down the street and around the perimeter of Heinleinville, and then come back inside where there would be an opera performance, because there was a platform built in the middle of the street, and there were musicians and there were opera performers, and all day there was this lots of noise, lots of singing, fireworks. It was all to invite the ghosts to come to the village and say, come, you are welcome here. And so the last day at night, there would be a procession, and everybody would take their special foods, and they would, first of all, they would bring all of the paper items that they had made for the ghosts, and they would be, like toys and animals, and then the paper effigies would be carried in this procession, and they would go walking to, in the night, they would walk carrying lanterns. They would walk to the creek where they would burn all of these items, and the smoke from these paper effigies and paper toys, they would carry it to the spirits, and they would feel that the spirits would be appeased and comforted. And they, when they walked home, all the pans of food were empty. So some people who stayed and watched it, they actually saw the spirits carrying off the food. And so the children went back to their homes, and it was by the end of the day, the evening, it was past midnight. And they were very exhausted, but they were content and happy, and they fell asleep with good dreams. And the happy scene that they could remember would be on the back of this hat. And you see, it's a mother and father and a child riding a mythical Chiling. And so one other thing I would like to mention is the food that the Hungry Ghost particularly liked. And it was a food called zai. And it was a vegetarian dish that the caretaker of the temple made. And he soaked all these ingredients in huge vats outside the temple. And then he fried it up in batches. And the Buddhist priest would bless all of this. And the zai would be welcome for the ghosts, of course. There'd be a portion set out for the ghosts at the end of the street. And everybody who contributed to the festival, all the merchants and their families, they would come and get a portion of this zai to take home, and they would partake too. So it was a wonderful festival for everyone. It was truly, the people did believe that what they were doing was a wonderful offering. It was a very important offering to the hungry spirits who had nobody to take care of them, who were wandering because they had no descendants to comfort them or to feed them. And they felt that they were providing this food, and also they were getting their blessings, and they felt that they were protected from evil spirits. And the children felt it was all treats and no tricks. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Connie. That was wonderful. In fact, it's interesting. When my son was born, during his first Halloween experience, one of our neighbors gave him a tiger hat. And my wife and I had no idea what that symbol. Now that I've heard your story, Danju, now I know what that tiger hat symbolizes. Yes. In fact, I'll have to go back and look at the photos I took of him.
It's good omens, all good omens.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Connie. Now, we have a couple of shared stories that have come in. The first shared spooky story is going to be told by Eugene Pinky Rentar. It's about something that happened to him and a friend in the old Filipino community building on North 6th Street. Now, some of you have probably walked by the current Filipino community building. It's a one-story building, and there's a large open patio area next to it. Well, before the 1960s, on that property were actually 3 two-story rickety wooden buildings on the lot. There was the Filipino community building, the Dimasalang Hall, and the Filipino boarding house. By the early 1960s, these 3 buildings were really falling apart and condemned. No one was allowed to live in them. And it's in this setting, which is the setting for Pinky's story. Now, Pinky's going to call me on my telephone right now and tell the story. So I'm sorry, the sound is not great. However, we are going to put a transcript of Pinky's story in the chat so you can follow along and see. Okay, let's see if we can get Pinky here.
Hi, sir. How are you?
Hi, Pinky. Are you ready to tell your story about what happened to you in the Filipino community building? If so, go right ahead and tell your story.
My friend and I, we did experience one thing. I think I was in 7th grade or 8th grade when that happened. And my Japanese friend that lived across the street at Toyota, they sent from the boarding house, across the street from the community. The old Filipino community was the old building, they paint the one that's condemned, not the new one, but the old one before. It was pretty stormy that night. But, that time, the buildings were condemned already, but nobody lived there. But they still had meetings downstairs. They didn't permit anybody to live there anymore. So it was stormy one night, and my friend and I, we were down just in the hall. We were inside with the hallway audience, but they had the meetings and things. They had a piano. We went to play the piano, and it sounded like somebody was rocking, on the 2nd floor. And it stopped, and then somebody heard it again. It really sounded like footsteps, We got so scared that we just, we didn't check to see if there was anybody up there. But we got the hell out of there. We never went back there anymore. But that's the experience. Maybe it was just a wind or something up there, but it really sounded like somebody was up there walking. That's the time the owner of the property of the Filipino community and the boarding house in the Japantown, he passed away. He died. So, I don't, when I told that to my friend, he said maybe that came walking upstairs. We never, stormy nights, never go back in the old community.
All right. Thank you, Pinky, for sharing that spooky story of the Filipino community building, the old wooden. And if you ever see photos of the wooden buildings, they just look like wooden boxes. The walls were not painted. I mean, they were really falling apart. So it must have been very, very scary to go in there. The second shared story that came in is from Ralph Pierce. He calls his story The Cat Mummy of Japantown. And I will read his story here. In the late 1980s, I lived in the old Hori Midwifery, which is located at 580 North 5th Street in Japantown. Now, for those of you, if you go to Japantown right now, there's a store on the corner called the Arsenal. Right next door to it is this house-like building. That used to be the Hori House, which unfortunately burned down a few years ago, but it was rebuilt. And this is the setting for Ralph's story. Now, Ralph continues, I was very curious about the building and its history. And one day I decided to explore under the house. Now, that's pretty creepy. If any of you have ever gone into the crawl space under the house, that is a very creepy thing because it's usually damp, dark. There's like all kinds of bugs underneath it. I've gone underneath the crawl space under my house, and I've always been worried that a black widow would fall on me or something. But anyway, Ralph continues, putting on some old clothes, I cautiously entered a narrow opening on the side of the house. My eyes adjusted to the dim light. I could make out an old rice tin to my left, and to my right was a pile of long, narrow tubes left over from the days when the house had gas lighting. And right in front of me, right in my path was a half-buried, mummified carcass of a cat. The cat had been partially preserved by the fact that it was near a water heater, which kept it warm and dry over the years. Well, I was determined to explore under the house, and I wasn't going to be deterred by a mummified cat. My eyes, however, stayed fixed on the cat as I crawled slowly past him. Patches of fur remained on the parchment-like skin that stretched over a skull whose threatening teeth were bared, ready to strike. I was truly amazed at my own superstitious fear as I carefully moved past the long dead cat. I was half expecting him to attack me at any moment. Can you imagine that? Being attacked underneath the house, you can hardly move. You're crawling around. Ugh. Anyway, having satisfied my curiosity, the cat mummy did allow me to exit its musty tomb, and I found a treasure of an ancient soda pop bottle underneath the house. That's Ralph Pierce's story of the cat mummy of Japantown. Do we have any other hidden history spooky stories that anyone has shared? No?
Looks like
Okay.
none of them.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us for these haunted hidden histories of San Jose, Japantown. Before you go to sleep, be sure to check under your bed, open up your closet, make sure nothing is inside there. Make sure no one is hiding under your bed.
Have a bag of rice ready.
Make sure you have a bag of rice by you.
You never know. The spirits might be.
Wear your mask.
Oh yeah, wear your mask.
I'm going to dream about that mask tonight, Connie. Thank you very much.
Okay. So everyone, happy Halloween. Have a nice
Halloween.
Halloween.
Love you all.
Halloween.
Bye.
Halloween.
Thank you.